Welcome to another episode of the Filipino Genealogy channel. Today, we are going to talk about the tale of 5 Lopez lines. And this is to answer a question that has been asked several times to this channel. Why having the same last name does not necessarily make you relatives? Filipinos believe that they are related to someone just because they share the same last name. This is very wrong. Because of the 1849 Claveria surname decree, there are hundreds of families carrying the same last name but are not at all related. To look back, the Kaveri Decree of 1849 directed all families in the Philippines without a formal last name to adopt one from a list of surnames called the Catalogo Alfabetico de Apellidos. The same list of surnames, containing just about 60,000+ last names, was distributed all over the archipelago. What that means is, by the time the Kaveri Decree was enacted, people all over the Philippine archipelago were adopting family names from the same list, even though they were not related. To illustrate this point, let us look at the last name Lopez. The patronymic name Lopez means son or descendant of Lope, and it is derived from the ancient name Lope, which in turn comes from the Latin lupus, which translates to wolf. Lupus is further derived from the Indo-European word ulknos. Though it may have several meanings, its most common meanings are evil, bloodthirsty, and much later became an old nickname that was meant to refer to reckless warrior. The surname Lopez is the 14th most populous surname in the Philippines, and it is borne by about 234,241 Filipinos and is found in 91% of the Philippines' cities and municipalities, which means that the surname Lopez is as ubiquitous as the top one surname in the Philippines, Cruz or De La Cruz. The top 5 cities with the greatest concentration of Lopezes are Quezon City, Santa Cruz in Manila, Cebu City, Davao City, and Caloocan City. Let us take a look at 5 very distinct Lopez lines in the Philippines and try to prove our point of how people carrying the same last name are not at all related. So, if we go to Metro Manila, we have the Honorio Lopez line. Now, this particular Lopez line is Ilocano in origin. And based on the records from the Spanish period, this particular line of Lopezes have the racial classification of Indio. Let's go to the Visayas. We have 2 distinct Lopez lines from the same town of Iloilo, specifically in the district of Haro. We have the Maximo Lopez line and the Basilio Lopez line. The Maximo Lopez family is Ilonggo in origin, and its racial classification was Mestizo Spanish. Meanwhile, the same family that can be found in Haro but not related to the Maximo Lopez line is the Basilio Lopez line. This is also Ilonggo in origin, but its racial classification is Mestizo Chinese. Still in the Visayas, we have the Francisco Lopez line. And this particular line is Bisaya in origin, and its racial classification is Spanish. Finally, way down in the south, in Davao City, we have the Elias Lopez line. Now this particular line of Lopezes is Bagobo in origin, and naturally its racial classification is indigenous Bagobo. To illustrate further and to discuss these particular lines, look at each line. We have the Honorio Lopez line. Now, the Honorio Lopez line, as mentioned earlier, is Ilocano in origin. It is a line that descends from Honorio Lopez, the first Filipino to produce a purely Tagalog almanac. His descendants include former Manila Mayor Emiliano Mel Campos Lopez Jr. and Manila 2nd District Congressman Jaime Lopez. This Lopez line comes from Batac, Ilocos Norte, and the surname of Lopez was adopted by the family in compliance to the Claveria Decree of 1849. The Maximo and the Basilio Lopez lines both come from Haro, Iloilo, and are not related by blood. While the Lopez name has recently become synonymous to the oligarchy, the earliest Lopezes from both lines were actually committed to philanthropic activities for love of God, while others were directly involved in the revolution to fight for the country's freedom and for democracy. The Maximo Lopez line begins with Don Maximo Lopez, a Spanish mestizo. Descendants of this line include Filipino journalist and founder of newspaper La Solidaridad, Graciano Lopez Jaina, and Don Roque Lopez, who used his inheritance to finance the revolution and support the families of poor Ilonggo revolutionaries even to the brink of bankruptcy. He later became the first president of the Estado Federal de Visayas. The Basilio Lopez line, on the other hand, is popular for its diverse economic and political clout. The family began with Don Basilio Lopez, a Chinese mestizo whose progeny include Fernando Lopez, who served 2 separate terms as Vice President of the Philippines, Don Eugenio Lopez Sr., the founder of ABS-CBN and Meralco, among other business interests, Gina Lopez, the former DENR Secretary, and Carlo Lopez Katigbak, the current President and CEO of ABS-CBN. The fourth line of Lopezes is the Hispanic Francisco Lopez line from Leyte. Its founder was Friar Francisco Miguel Lopez y Silgado, who came from Illora, Granada, Spain. Although fathering several children, he was nevertheless a pioneering priest who built towns in rural Leyte, and his descendants have helped shape Philippine history. Among his descendants are former First Lady Imelda Marcos and the rest of the Romualdez clan of Leyte, actor Ian Lopez Veneracion, and former National Youth Commissioner and current Cebu Port Authority Commissioner Michael Mike Lopez. The last line is the Elias Lopez line of Davao City. Elias Lopez was a member of the Bagobo Indigenous Peoples Group who became a mayor of Davao City. His son, Rui Elias Lopez, served as a congressman of Davao City. From these 5 lines alone, it is clear that having the same family name, even among the wealthy and the influential clans, does not always translate to being relatives. So the next time you meet someone who shares your last name, ask first from which line he or she is to know if you are related or not. We hope you enjoyed and learned something from this short episode of the Filipino Genealogy channel. We hope to see you again soon in our next video, and thank you for watching. Stay safe always. Goodbye.